Hello Year 8s, welcome to our first flipped learning video for literacy. And you notice that we have a meme up on the screen right now. I'm sure you're thinking, what's this meme doing here? Aren't I supposed to be learning? Well, I've got news for you. You're gonna learn from this. You might have seen things like this before, but we see the caption, "Stop clubbing baby seals." Why is this picture appropriate for that? You kind of have in mind something like this. This was the intention of the sentence, right? Stop clubbing baby seals. We don't want people to do that anymore. But in the last picture, the punctuation actually changes the sentence completely. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on in the next few weeks of this term, looking at the power of punctuation, how it really changes things, and why you really do need to be focusing a lot of attention towards it. So the original intention is stop clubbing baby seals. Going over what we've talked about in previous weeks, looking at the components of a sentence. We've got the verb being stop clubbing. The action of clubbing is what they want to be stopped. And the object of baby seals, we don't want this to be happening to baby seals anymore. But when the comma comes in it, the image comes to mind a bit more like baby seals dancing in a club. That is because we have the object being clubbing, a verb being stop, the action is to stop the object of clubbing, and the subject of the sentence, the thing actually doing the action, is the baby seal. It could be written very simply as seals stop clubbing. We can see that the subject is the seal, the action is to stop, and the object is clubbing. So it leads me into this idea of punctuation and grammar, which is huge in English. This is what you need to be able to do in order to be successful in all subjects. And we're going to begin with something really simple, which is combining two independent clauses. Now, an independent clause might be a new term for you. So essentially, that's just one of those really simple sentences we've been looking at over the past weeks. It is a sentence that has a subject and a verb, and that forms a complete thought. So, the examples are, the lazy students whine, students being the subject, and whine being the verb. Cola spilled over the glass and splashed onto the counter. Cola being the subject of that sentence, so the thing that is doing the action, and is both being spilled and being splashed. And then another example, my dog loves pizza. The dog is the thing doing the action, and loves is the action. He's loving things. And we can see how these real simple sentences make sense. And that's all it is. So we're going to look at some main errors that people make when they want to put two clauses in a sentence together, because sometimes they do go together. Looking at the example here, which is incorrect. I like this class, it's very interesting. We can see those two ideas go together. So I get the want to write it like that. But the issue is that it's actually a fused sentence, or some people might call it a run-on sentence. And here's why. We've noticed that there is a subject in this first section. I am doing the action of liking this class, which is the object. So that's forming a complete thought. And then we move on. It, being the class, subject, is the verb, it is being that thing, it is doing that, and interesting is an adjective. So we can see that there are actually two separate clauses here, two complete thoughts that could function on their own. So it doesn't make sense to have them going on together like that. And why is that? It's because they are two separate ideas, so they need to be separated. When you're writing a whole essay, and you have numerous sentences like this, it actually gets really tough to follow and actually really exhausting because you don't know how it's meant to be read. I like this class, it is very interesting. You don't know where you're meant to pause. You need to make things easy for the reader, the teacher marking your work, by telling them where to pause. Now, you might be thinking, why don't we just split it up with a comma? Well, that would be the other error people make with combining two clauses. And why is that? It is because a comma is actually used to separate the structural elements of a sentence. It is not used just to separate two sentences. So, going back to that meme at the start, we saw that the comma moved around the sentence and put the subject at the end. You don't use a comma just to separate two ideas. There are many uses for commas, but that is not it. So, we're going to go into some strategies, how to fix it. The first and most simple option is to just treat the two clauses as two separate sentences. So, punctuate with a period or a full stop, and then start a new sentence. This will look like, I like this class, full stop. It is very interesting. Very simple, they work really well on their own like that. Another strategy, and this one's a bit more complicated, you can treat them as two sentences, but actually acknowledge the relationship between the two, because they are talking about the same thing. So you can punctuate with a semicolon, and I know a lot of people struggle with knowing when and where to put a semicolon. So here is where it's appropriate. I like this class, semicolon, it is very interesting. So a semicolon won't always work to just replace a full stop. It only works when the two sentences or two clauses are really closely linked. So it's using the word it to refer to this class. This second sentence could always be written as, this class is very interesting. So we can see how they build on one another there, and so a semicolon is appropriate. And the final strategy is to create a really strong link between the two. So you insert a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So a coordinating conjunction can be any of these ones up here. And, but, for, nor, yet, so, or. Just really simple things that combine them and indicate how you should think about them. So what that might look like is, I like this class and it is very interesting. Because you're saying those ideas go together well. You have to be aware of how the ideas are linked though, because an incorrect version of this sentence would be, I like this class, but it is very interesting. The but indicates that two ideas kind of contradict each other. You know, you might say, I like this class, but it can be boring sometimes. So that's something bad about this class that contradicts the fact that you like it. So here, when you're saying, I like this class, but it's very interesting, the but doesn't work because interesting actually supports this idea. So we'll move on to some examples. But before we go on to that, another one of these conjunctions actually could have worked in this sentence. Can you have a guess what one it is? You could have gone, I like this class for. It is very interesting. For is just another way of saying because. You know, it is cold today for the weather says so. Things like that. So we're going to go into some practice now for those of you who weren't here when we did this in class. I want to go to the beach. Mary refused. So we can already see that these are two separate clauses, I being the subject, going being the verb, beach being the object. I go to the beach. Mary is the subject in the new sentence, and she is doing the verb, the action of refusing. So we can see how this works well. But some practice. Which one of these conjunctions should be used there? What will be appropriate? And moving on now. I'm allergic to cats. Some sort of conjunction there. I have 3 of them. Again, you can see how this is a clause. Have 3 of them being this object. So what will go where? Have a go at thinking about how these two ideas are linked and what conjunction would be the best to go with them. And one last example. I'm a vegetarian. Some sort of conjunction. I don't eat any meat. What one works there? So hopefully this makes a bit more sense. Just simple things like 2 separate thoughts, how you can combine them to make sense for your reader. It's all about making your writing fluent, so as teachers we can understand what you're trying to say and we can give you the best grade possible.